Last lesson we talked about how markets become more competitive, and we also talked about how businesses can respond to that higher competition. We talked about how they have to, develop new products, try to become more efficient, increase their promotion, or find a completely new market for their products. Then we talked about niche and mass marketing, their characteristics, their benefits, and the disadvantages or the threats from each one. Last piece we talked about was market segmentation. And I said it's very similar to niche marketing. These are businesses trying to provide products for certain segments of the market. We said usually businesses divide their market according to geographically or demographically. Uh, it depends on the nature of the business. So this is what we didn't talk about the last lesson. So how do they segment their market? It completely depends on what product is provided by the business. Okay, so if, for example, in your book, the example of a traveling agency is given. So if I have a traveling agency, it only makes sense if I divide my market or segment it demographically. For example, some people are interested in a certain experience for their traveling for different reasons than other groups. So if I have a family, I wouldn't be interested in going to areas where young people go to, or things, or doing activities that young people would be interested in. So dividing my services according to my customers' age groups would be a good idea. And it'd also be a good idea to look at their family structure. That's demographic as well. And also I could use the factor of how rich they are, because I would not include, for example, uh, expensive destinations or expensive retreats if the family cannot afford it. So that's why it's useful. And there are other examples to how businesses do it. I give you the example of Netflix and
Hi,
how their
Tijan.
services and the products that they provide depends, is their market is divided geographically. And I told you some of the movies and TV shows that they have on there depends on which geographical location you subscribe to Netflix. So if you're from Asia, you would usually have Asian movies. If you're from America, you would have more Hollywood movies than European movies, and so on. And car manufacturers do it as well. This is an example of a demographic segmentation. If the customers have family, then you provide a family car. If you have young customers who are interested in off-roading, then you would have that as well. Fast. So this is a demographical segmentation. Adidas does that as well. It's a demographical segmentation. They have products for both genders, and they would also have products for different types of people in terms of interest and lifestyle. So if I'm interested in sports versus if I'm interested in casual wear, they provide those two types of products as well. Chipotle is a restaurant chain, Mexican in America, and so this is one of their offers for kids. They have kids menu or kids meal, and this is a promotion for it. This is an example of a demographical segmentation, providing your goods to children. I mean, it's very obvious to understand why it's a wise idea as a business owner to do this. Obviously, the most obvious reason is that you would have more chance of success. What that means is that there is less risk of failure, and also you have more sales at the same time, both. What that means is that if Netflix in America fails, then they have their other chains around the world to continue to provide their services to. So you have more chance of success. And also you sell to more people. And when you do that, by default, you make more profit. Excuse me. And also,
Sir, sorry.
yes.
We can't compare car market with restaurant markets, right?
Which two markets you can't compare? Sorry.
Car market with a food market.
Yeah, yes, true. Yeah, any in business studies, anytime you want to understand your business in terms of other businesses, usually compare it to businesses in the same industry or market. Yeah, that is true. Okay, so yeah, so more profitability, why we segment the market. And I told you this is important back then. You become more competitive. The reason you become more competitive is that when you provide more goods to more people, then your unit cost comes down as a result of economies of scale. So don't forget that you will end up with this advantage, economies of scale, hence the more efficient, more competitive factor. And but you have to be able to explain why that is. Why do you end up in an economies of scale? Well, the reason is that, for Adidas, for example, or Ford, the material they use to make the cars are very similar. So let's say it's aluminum and steel. Well, you buy a lot of it since you have more customers and you make more cars. When you do, you get a discount from your suppliers. Leather, fabric would be another example for Adidas, and food ingredients would be very similar to the kids menu as a menu as well. So unit cost comes down, you become more efficient, you sell more, your brand image improves because you satisfy customers' specific groups of people's needs, so they respect you more. Your market share increases, and so on. So these are a bunch of benefits to market segmentation. Don't forget to know them all, and you should be able to explain fully why they're
Okay.
good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so market research. It's our next topic. Why do we do market research? Well, for this reason, uh, the market changes all the time, competition increases. There has to be certain ways I can improve my business. How is the question? Well, how do you answer those questions? By doing research. What do you do exactly? Well, you go about collecting data about whom, about your customers, about the market, about your competitors mainly. It could be about the government. It could be about the economy of the country. What do you do to the data that you collect? You go about analyzing it, see what it means. So you change the raw data into graphs and pictures that you can understand. And then you go about having meetings about what those graphs and illustrations mean in a meeting with other expertise, other people, other personnel. And then at the end, you make a decision based on the data that you collected. So that's how market research goes. That's the process of it. Um, the benefits would be to answer some of these questions. Who are my customers? What do they want? What do they need? What geographies of cells have more potential? What can be my distribution channel, and so on. So basically, these questions are answered usually for people instinctively. So if I want to start my own business, I would usually go about saying, okay, where am I living? Obviously, I live in Slimani, Kurdistan, Iraq. Okay, how are the people in this city? Well, I've been living here for a while to understand what they expect or what they need from me or a business in general. Okay, is there a gap for that product? Well, you look at the market and you compare it to international markets, see what they have and what is lacking here in our city. Maybe you fulfill that gap. Okay, next question. Are the people ready, even though they want that service, but are they ready economically? Meaning, do they have enough income? Well, how do you know? Well, you might go about, asking people questions, or you already know about the economical situation since you live here. So it's easy for you to answer some of those questions. And you also say, okay, what is the expectation of customers in Slimani for that service? Do I have to deliver the goods to them myself, or do I have to open up wholesale points or stocks and warehouses in the city so that the distribution is more convenient for my customers. So that's how it works. But businesses, wise businessmen, they usually wouldn't answer these questions themselves. They would go and find the most accurate answer to these questions. Okay. So how do you do it? How do you get these accurate information? Meaning, how do you collect the data? Well, you have to do sampling. Okay. And also on this slide, you have another example of two case studies of market research and why it's useful. Okay. I just gave you the example, local example. We already talked about these two examples. You can go through them yourself again. Okay, so now we come to how do you do it? Well, there are two main approaches to it. One is primary, second one is secondary. Primary is when you collect and gather the data yourself. So it's raw data collected as a result of your own genuine exclusive research for the purpose of your business. Second one is secondary. And secondary is information that is already collected and maybe analyzed as well by other people or your business. Okay, that's not a distinction. It could be your business or it could be other people, but the distinction is this one. It's not collected for your purpose. Okay, meaning, let me give you an example. So if I want to know whether Slimani is ready for McDonald's, what I do for primary market research is to go ask people exclusively, like, would you be interested in McDonald's in Slimani? How many people would be able to go to McDonald's in Slimani and so on? And then I analyze that information myself. Secondary would be if I go online and read about what people's review is about Pizza Hut, which is already open there, or Burger King, which is already open there. Okay, so it's not so what they think about Burger King, what they think about the price of Burger King. So I can use that information for my McDonald's and endeavor, but it's not data collected for that particular endeavor. That makes it secondary market research. Okay, so I could have that information myself. Like I could have gone to people and asked them about what do you think about Burger King.
So
And I use that information now for this new one. But since it's not for this new purpose, it's secondary market research. Yes.
sir, sorry, but what about if you want to research for your competitors?
Yeah, that's
Is it
market
primary or
research.
secondary?
Yeah, that's market research as well. And
I know,
if
but is
it's
it primary or secondary?
it depends. It depends. If it's the information is collected about your competitors and it's part of a research that is not exclusively related to your purpose right now, then it's secondary. And the opposite is for primary. Let me give you an example. So for the Pizza Hut example that I just gave you, if there is information about who the competitors are and how strong they are, so you have a list of Pizza Hut and Burger King and so on. That would be secondary since you didn't collect it yourself and not for the purpose of opening McDonald's. It's just information collected a while ago. While if it's primary, then I want to start McDonald's in Slimani, then I go and find information about my competitors in Slimani because I want to understand how McDonald's would do now, then it would be primary. Okay, so this is a good distinction between two. Primary, we use original data. The data is new. This one is the result of others, literary study desk research. The data already exists. And usually, so the reason we have this code here is that secondary market research comes with a lot of advantages. Before I talk about the advantages, what are the sources? You can go to the internet, but you have to be careful about using the internet. As you know, some sources are not reliable and they contain misleading information. So you have to authenticize the sources that you use, the websites. You can use government publication, uh, like announcements or official TV channels that have government related publications on them. Or the government could have its own newspaper, so whatever the publication is. You could have uh, libraries, market research agencies, and business records, your own record, as a source of secondary market research. So let me stop at this market research agency. Certain businesses do market research for other entities and businesses. You hire them to do it. You don't do it yourself. And the reason that is because they have more experience. They know better how to do it, and they waste less resources doing it. And the information that they gather is more accurate. Okay, and then the benefits, if I can go to it now, would be, these sources are all available and they're cheap and they're fast and quick, all analyzed. Um, but there could be misleading. The information could be outdated, old, not applicable to this new market, because as you know, markets change all the time. Um, Also, yeah, so now let's go to primary market research methods. We talked about focus group. Focus group is a qualitative approach to collecting primary market research data. The way it's done is to invite people from different walks of life. Like this one, it sports fan. This one is a dad. This one is a mom. One could be a worker. One could be a teacher. One could be a doctor. So what you do is that you pay these people. They come to your premises, and you ask them question about your business or whatever you're doing research about. For example, if you have your product, you give them a sample, and they test it out and they discuss it. That's how it works. So it's qualitative because a lot of the discussion is opinion. I love the color because I love the way it drove because. Uh, it could also have some quantitative information as well. For example, how many people liked it and how many people didn't like it. But that's not how it's used usually, because you have a small group of people. So you can't use it quantitatively. It's mostly qualitative to get their suggestion. That's what it is. Same way you would go to your family and ask them, what do you think about my clothes today? The only difference is that you don't pay your family to answer those questions for you. They do it graciously. Okay. So second method is observation. I told you back then that this method is usually used by supermarkets, and it had the advantage of the participants not knowing that they're being observed, so they're being completely themselves, not any under influence to change their behavior while doing the activity. So what you do is that you record their behavior and you do your own interpretation to why they behave that way, how many minutes they spend in a certain aisle, how many minutes they spend looking at a certain item, and so on. Um, the only limitation is that this guy over here with the tab is expensive to hire, because these are experienced market research personnel, and they do the analysis for the behavior of the participants. So you have to pay them, and that's expensive. And also, you don't have the opportunity to ask them what they think. Sorry, why they behave that way. They just behave that way. You have to interpret their behavior yourself, and it could be wrong. Same way, if you are sitting down in a group with friends, and suddenly some of them behaves in a certain way or says something, you have at least five explanations, interpretations to why your friend behaved that way. Some of it is negative, some of it is positive. So you say he behaved that way because, let me think about what I did wrong to him last time I saw him. So you start blaming yourself, or you blame other people. So that's what that guy is doing. That's his job. Okay, so that's part of observation. Okay, so third method is test market. And I told you that, Kentucky recently launched this product, which is a new product, and they were not sure it contains some new flavors, and they were not sure how their customers would react to it globally. So what they did was to launch it in a town, in a city, in a state. So a very small market first, and then they went about doing research about what the customers thought in that particular geographical location about the new product. When the result was positive, they extended that to more states, more cities, gradually in steps. So you would launch it in another city, monitor their behavior, success, go to another city, success, and so on. So that's what test marketing is. And the reason businesses do it, obviously, is to eliminate or reduce the risk of failure, because there is a chance that if you launch it, nobody likes it, and you spend all that money on promotion, on raw material, on factory, and so on, and it was a failure. So if it fails and turns out people don't like it, the loss is less. That's the point. Yeah. So the limitation obviously is that it takes a long time for obvious reasons, and also it's expensive since you have to launch it in different cities, and if it turns out that people don't like it, then you lose that money. But compared to a full launch, it's less. Okay, so methods. Method 4 is consumer survey. Survey is done in different ways, but the idea is the same. You ask people questions, and they tick an option for an answer. So it's like a questionnaire. It could be done as interviews, like these two are doing face to face. You ask them the questions and they answer it, and you take the answers for them. The main limitation to this is that the participants could be biased, because they could be nice to you and give the answers that they think you expect, because you are there and you're a stranger. So their answers could not be completely honest. That's what bias is. But at the same time, there's an advantage to it, which is, you have the chance to explain to them what the questions mean. So there's more chance for clarity. But if you compare it to postal survey, there is nobody to explain the questions to you. So people could just tick the questions just randomly, even though they don't understand it. And some people don't even read the questions, and that's a big problem. They just answer quickly to get over with, because what is there in it for them? Online surveys, the same thing. Most people treat it as junk. They don't answer it. They don't reply. Only the people who already like the businesses do reply. And this characteristic is shared with B as well, postal survey. If I love Ralph Lauren and there's suddenly a questionnaire coming from them, then there's more chance that I will answer the questions for them myself. But it could not be the case for someone who doesn't like Ralph Lauren. So all the answers that Ralph Lauren gets is positive, which it does not indicate that Ralph Lauren is great. Everybody loves them. It's just that only the people who love them already answer the questions, and that's another source of bias. So you have to be really, really careful about the way you understand each of these methods, guys. It's really important for the exam. Okay, now to wrap things up, I'm going to stop at secondary market research for today, but let's see what primary market research has in limitations and benefits. Well, the most obvious ones is that it's up to date, it's new, so it's valid for the current market. That's really important. Markets now are very, very volatile and dynamic. It changes all the time. So it's really important for people to have updated information. The data is relevant because it's exclusively collected for the purpose of the business or the problem. And lastly, it's not available to others, which is really important. Your competitors don't have access to this information. So you might end up with a competitive advantage at the end of a market research process. Because you have access to more information. And that's, guys, how you gain experience as a business owner in a market. You just don't do things and forget them. That's not the way to do it. You have to ask yourself questions, write them down, have answers, and remember them. That's how you can build up things on top of the things that you already did. That's how you learn from your mistakes. The limitation is that it's costly, obviously, for obvious reasons, because you have to do them yourself. So if I do the interview, you have to have the interviewer, someone you hire to do the interview for you. And you have to have people who can analyze the information and give you guidance to how you can use the information as well. So all these things make it costly. Compare that to using the internet for secondary market research. It's completely free. It's time consuming because it has to be done from scratch. Already told you how that is. Bias, you have the problem of bias because the data collected is usually reliant on doing interviews and so on,
Mustafa,
which could be really biased. Yes.
do you have mock exam or something like that extra, like old mock exams that we have done? Can you post on Google Classroom,
What do
like
you
case
mean?
studies? Case
Oh,
study, yeah.
doing a mock exam, you mean?
Yeah, the old mock exams that we have done. Like, can you post on Google Classroom? We practice on it.
Mm. Well, the problem is that I had an old laptop which broke, and it's at school. I don't think they've fixed it yet. So I have to go through the emails that I sent to Miss Linja for printing, which might take a while, but I will try.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, we're done for today. If you don't have any questions, class is dismissed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye.